Hi there. Today I'd like to share with you one of the techniques that I use for world building. It's not something that I usually use for making all of my books, but it is something I find very helpful when talking to people about how ideas can be turned into a full story, how you can get ideas in the first place. It's especially useful when I go into schools and I use this technique with the kids there. And we can come up with a good idea for a story very quickly without a great deal of effort. That's very useful when a lot of the children will not believe that they know where to start with a story. The basic concept is that I get a bunch of images from Google that look really interesting, like cool landscapes, interesting photography and things like that. You can just find with searching for cool images, cool landscapes, that sort of thing, and get a few dozen of those. I use 100 because I do this regularly. And then you ask the audience for a random number between 1 and 100, and you do that several times. Each picture you use to build up the world building. You use it to make a narrative. You can add things that seem to connect together. And sometimes when things don't seem to fit together, you can create something even more interesting. As an example, I'm going to use the world that we built together at the Edinburgh Festival with other author Tom Huddleston. His book Flood World is coming out soon, if not already, by the time you watch this. I tend to use real world photos because I think it's a good way to get into. It's a good way to use the actual reality to spark people's imagination. But you can use anything you find. If you just say a particularly cool piece of fan art or something like that, that can be really useful. I'll try and credit all of the photographers in the links below. It's sometimes quite difficult to get those off search, so if I've not got any of those correct, I'm sorry about that. This is the first picture that we picked out, and as you can see, it's this lovely fiery orange and autumn kind of forest there. Tom immediately said that it felt like there will be somebody that was riding through it on some kind of mysterious adventure, and from there we started asking the audience what they thought and what it made them feel like, what they made them think of, anything that image sparked in their imagination. Very quickly, we got the suggestion that the leaves looked like a phoenix coming off the trees, and that was really the jumping off point for whatever else we got in that session. Everybody built off that cool idea, and that's all it takes, really, that one spark to have a cool idea, and you can come up with a good narrative to fit it. Sparked a cat's imagination as well, apparently. For the second picture, the audience chose at random. It was this owl that's stuck in the side of a tree or roosting in the side of a tree. And I like this because it looks so like it's also almost coming out of the tree. And that's what the audience kind of came up with as well. They liked the idea that the owl was almost being born from the tree, a bit like they were saying with the phoenixes coming out of the previous flame-coloured trees. And then we started to build this idea of a forest or sets of forests, different kinds of trees that birth strange birds, magical birds. There are quite a few suggestions about what this owl or even the phoenixes might be doing in the forest. General suggestions of the owl were things like it's a kind of hunter that's getting ready to attack the characters, or that it might be some kind of protector of the forest, watching things as they go past. Next, we came up with this image, which you might think, oh, it doesn't really fit with the other ones, and that's what we got at the time. People were like, oh, how are we going to make that fit? And then somebody from the audience said that it made them think, oh, what if this was the area in which a bunch of the trees have been cleared away, that perhaps somebody is trying to destroy these living, like sentient trees, and that's kind of part of what the narrative is, dealing with the fact that these people are trying to harm the forest. It was also somewhere around here that people started coming up with the idea that the trees, each one that was of a single creature, the owl, the phoenix, that kind of thing, might be all the trees of that kind are all connected together. They're all one organism, one kind of tree, which is how some trees in the real world do exist. Perhaps not creating magical birds, but still being one kind of organism together. Next, we've got this amazing sort of ice. It's almost a sculpture, though it's just something that forms out of terrible cold weather. It almost looks like a monster itself, even though it's just a formation of ice. And of course, the next thing that one of the children pointed out was that, oh, well, what if this is also a phoenix, but an ice phoenix instead of a fire one? And that's not the normal way it goes in the myth, but there's no reason you can't do whatever you want to do in your own story. So That's what we thought it was. We decided that it was going to be that the forest had this major conflict between the ice and the fire side of it, and the other kind of the owl tree or the bird trees might be just kind of caught in the middle of it, as might our main characters, whoever they might end up being. Finally, we've had this really cool image of glowworms in a cave, and immediately people were saying, "Oh, that's got to be under the trees. It's got to be their roots. It's going to be maybe there's a path through the roots down into this place. Maybe they're kind of eggs or seeds for the bird trees above." And they really like the almost mirror-like river as well. Like maybe that's a source of power or what's empowering the trees in the first place. And the fact that it looked like Mercury was pointed out, and because Mercury is historically associated with sort of immortality and rebirth, that kind of thing, just like phoenixes are, it really fit quite well together. This exercise really didn't take very long at all. It only took sort of 15 to 20 minutes, and we came up with this general kind of idea for a world on it. Now, we don't have all the characters down, we don't have what exactly the narrative is, but people were already thinking, well, how do you get from that first riding through that misty forest under these strange fiery trees to eventually exploring deep under them and finding these caves, these strange magical roots or whatever else they are, and how you can kind of explore all the concepts that they've just come up with in a few minutes. And that's, of course, just one kind of story you can get out of this. With 100 images, or even much less, you can reorder them and randomize them and end up with so many different stories from it. I've had great ideas from all sorts of different events that I've been to. I've had an island of talking animals that is trapped in a bottle that when you tip it out, the island will appear on the sea in like grand size compared to the miniaturized version in the bottle. I've had aliens under Stonehenge. It's been suggested that there's a dream thief that's pulling dreams from sleeping children and bottling them up, making the world making colour drain away from the world. There's plenty of different genres as well, as long as you keep a variety of images. There was one where there was a bunch of nightmarish monsters that were being born on a sort of glowing globe at the base of a tree, and a child had to go to that place and find a way inside to stop them coming out into the world and wrecking it. All this stuff is coming from people that don't have any real writing experience beyond a little bit of schoolwork, and it just shows how much imagination you can spark with just a little thing to begin with. And I always really enjoy seeing the results of this whenever I'm in a school doing this kind of work with them. You can build on this and go into do some more character-based work afterwards, no problem with it. And once they've got that hook, that world that they feel is theirs, they start immediately building on it and making more things with no problems at all. So I hope you enjoyed this look at one of the techniques I use to do world building, especially with audiences. If you find it useful, please do let me know about it. I'd love to hear what kind of worlds people come up with using this kind of thing. As always, Frostfire can be found in all good bookshops in the US and in the UK. If you've enjoyed this, please do listen to my other videos. There's readings from my other works. There's some analysis of things that I've got in it, behind the scenes of first chapters, that kind of thing. So thank you for listening, and see you again.